Yeah, we'll get it ready for you when it's. Five.
Do you need this or since I sent it to you?
Oh, you're good. I have it with the file. Yep. Thank you.
Awesome.
I do. I think that's it. Oh, yours is.
Steven can be here.
Okay.
Oh, there he is.
All right, Dana.
Thanks, man.
I mean to take over.
No.
Thought he was gonna
it's
miss
fine.
out on fun.
If we're gonna have this much fun, I might as well have a drink.
Yeah.
Brought the whole.
I was
glad to forget.
It's time.
wow, look at
You ready?
change the format.
A different color. Okay, it's 1:30. It's time on our schedule for a set of planning hearings here. Today, we're going to be hearing files ZC 0003-22, MOD 0005-21, MOD 0010-21, and then last but not least, AM 0001-22 and ZC 0002-22. Wow. Is there anybody in the audience that has a hearing or visual impairment that might need some assistance? No? Seeing okay? Okay, I'll make sure. Okay. Seeing none, I'll call for conflicts of interest.
Sure, Tommy has no conflict.
Commissioner Bradshaw has no comment. But I do know one of the applicants. I've known him for a long
I
time.
guess I do too.
So,
No,
I'm just happy to
Mr.
remember, I'm
Howard.
just happy to remember your names.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Commissioner McDonald, I have no conflict, but I do know Bob Howard. He works for the county.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
so.
With that, for those that have never been through a planning hearing before, we'll kind of go through how this works. We're going to have staff present their staff report. Then we'll have some time for the applicant that can give an overview, or the applicant's representative if there is one. Then we'll move into public testimony. Public testimony, we always start out with those in support of the file, those neutral, which rarely there's anybody that's ever been proven to be neutral. And then those that are opposed, you get 3 minutes. You need to make sure you stick to the file at hand, no wandering off. And then after that, we'll have the opportunity for rebuttal by staff or the applicant if necessary. And then we'll close that and go into the commissioners will deliberate. So with that, I will go ahead and turn this turning it over to staff for ZC 0003-22.
Commissioners, good afternoon. Daniel Britt, planning staff for the record. We're here to discuss a zone change from AF20 to AF10. So Bonner County Revised Code requires us, staff and governing bodies, to review the particular facts and circumstance of each proposal and determine whether there's adequate evidence for the proposal, and if it's in accordance with the general and specific objectives of the comprehensive plan. Bonner County Revised Code 12320 guides us to the purpose statements for each zoning district, which helps guide the applications to see if the property is appropriately zoned. They ask. So this is the purpose statement for the AF district, is to preserve, protect, maintain areas that are rural in character and the integrity in the forest woodland areas where viable agricultural pursuits can be feasible to avoid the fragmentation of forest and farms. The applicant is requesting a zone change from AF20 to AF10 to have the ability to divide the parcel. This request was evaluated against the standards for the AF20 and the AF10. The AF district allows for the parcels within the district to be 20 acres or 10 acres based on the standards. The parcel will remain within its current comprehensive plan designation of ag forest land. So a little background on the site. It is an unplatted 20 parcels. It's currently zoned AF20, and has a land use designation of ag forest land. It's accessed off of West Shingle Mill Road, which is Bonner County owned and maintained gravel travel surface. Few environmental factors on this particular parcel. It doesn't contain mapped slopes. It does, however, have a small portion of wetland in there, as well as an intermittent stream. It's not within a special flood hazard zone. Services provided to this parcel are Odin Bay Water Association for water, sewage is individual septic, fire protection is provided by Northside Fire District, power is Northern Lights, and is within the school district number 84. So a couple soils are found on this particular parcel. The light purple we're looking at here on the left-hand side of the parcel is prime farmland if drained, and the darker purple there, if you can see it, is farmland of statewide importance if drained. These are the current map designations for the current zoning and comprehensive plan. So these are the standards of review for the parcel. Existing zoning is the F20. The criteria is set forth here. Is the parcel got a designation land use of ag forest? It does. Does it contain prime ag soils? It doesn't. Is it characterized by agricultural or forestry pursuits? It is. If one or more apply, limited services, slopes greater than 30%, is not accessed by standard road system, and where large tracts can be devoted to ag forest uses. It doesn't, but it does meet all the criteria for the proposed zoning of the AF10, which in the land use designation, it is for AF forest. It doesn't not have prime ag soils. It is within an area of city impact. It is afforded fire protection, access by standard roads and other services. These are the agencies that were reviewed or routed for comment on this project. Panhandle Health submitted a comment for recommendations, as did DEQ. City of Kootenai responded with some areas of city impact facts. Idaho Department of Transportation had no comment. Idaho Fish and Game had no comment. No public comments were received on this request. The findings and facts have not changed since the time staff report was prepared, and the conclusions of laws have not changed since the staff report was prepared. Staff found that the zoning proposal is consistent with Bonner Revised County Code, and planning and zoning recommend approval unanimously. That concludes my presentation. I can take any questions.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff?
I do not.
No?
Not at this time.
Applicant. You know, I have one question, but it's got 38 parts. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So it's always good to suck up the planning part. I'm just kidding.
Jeez.
Okay. I can't resist. Sorry, Bob. I told you I was going to give you a hard time. Yeah. Let's go to anybody that wishes to speak in favor of this. Wow. I just got back from a week's vacation, so I'm still trying.
Well, you can speak.
Well, you know, we kind of figured that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Captain Obvious.
That was something, yeah.
Anyone neutral? One of these days, someone's going to truly be neutral.
You wanna
I'm
be
gonna
neutral?
shocked. Okay, is there anyone opposed to this file that wishes to speak? You want to be opposed just for fun?
Yeah, no.
No. Okay. Well, seeing that, there's no need for rebuttal since there was no opposition. So we'll go ahead and close it for deliberation. I'll start. Clearly, this thing, as we see with a lot of these parcels, you'll have some elements that may work better in one zoning than others, but we always look for the preponderance of elements that, or the overwhelming number of elements that fit in one or the other to help us determine which is the best zoning for this. And clearly, this thing meets every standard for AF10. It meets only a couple for AF20, so I don't see an issue with granting this this zone change.
Or do I?
Yeah, for sure. If you look at the map, especially up there, you can kind of see that the reality of it is it should have probably been all 10s, AF10, but I guess it's 1020, so it can be either. So I agree that this fits into this area quite well. Matter of fact, this probably might even fit into the 5s because of the closeness to the ACIs and all that stuff. So, but anyway, I'm good.
Okay. Mr. Bradshaw?
I are good.
I are good. Okay. Well, with that, then I will go ahead and entertain a motion.
That me?
Whoever.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve project file ZC 0003-22, requesting a zone change from agriculture forestry 20 to agriculture forestry 10, finding that it is in accord with the general and specific objectives of the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan and Bonner County Revised Code as enumerated in the following conclusions of law and based upon the evidence submitted up to the time the staff work was prepared and testimony received at this hearing. I further move to adopt the findings of facts, conclusions of law as set forth in the staff report and direct the planning staff to draft written findings and conclusions to reflect this motion. Have the chairman sign and transmit to all interested parties. The action does not result in the taking of private property.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Conley?
Aye.
Commissioner Bradshaw?
Aye, ma'am.
Okay, now I'll go ahead and entertain a motion for the zone change ordinance motion.
All right, I move to approve an ordinance of Bonner County, Idaho, the number to be assigned, citing its authority and providing for the amendment of the official zoning map of Bonner County by the reclassification of lands located in section 29, township 58 north, range 1 west, Boise Meridian, Bonner County, Idaho, from Ag Forest 20 to Ag Forest 10, and providing for an effective date. I further move to authorize the chair to sign the official supplementary zoning map upon publication of the ordinance.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Conley?
Aye.
Commissioner Bradshaw?
Aye, ma'am.
That takes care of that file. We'll go ahead and close that and move on to file MOD 0005-21. Staff may begin whenever they're ready.
What was it again, Dan?
00.
10? Should be 10.
0521.
Oh, okay, I'm
You skipped
skipping
one.
one.
There you go.
Dang it. Trying to get done quicker.
Just use that one.
Okay. Thanks, Commissioners. Chad, planning staff for the record. Just pulling up the PowerPoint here. Okay, so we're here to discuss get this full screen here, a change to a zoning ordinance that was passed, I believe, in 2018 for 2 lots located off of Goldfinch Lane in section 21, township 54 north, range 4 west, in the Quail Ridge subdivision. This is the location of both lots in question today. They're in the Spirit Lake area. Again, they're requesting a change to the zoning ordinance that was adopted in 2018. And they're requesting the following, that from the ordinance, section 3 improvements, which states, quote, divisions of land within the rezone boundaries described herein shall be developed with roadways meeting the low volume private road standard set forth in Bonner County Revised Code, Title 12, Appendix A, Section 2.5A. Such roadways shall be paved, close quote, and quote, whereas the Board of County Commissioners did find that the zone change request ZC 365-18 is in accordance with the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan and have determined that future divisions of land within the rezone boundaries warrant paved surface low volume private roadways, close quote. Again, the site characteristics relatively flat, steeper slopes, really not there. We're looking at two 10-acre lots. It's in the rural residential comprehensive land use plan. It's zoned rural 5-acre. Access is by Goldfinch Lane, gravel road, neither county owned nor maintained. No wetlands on the property or stream systems that run through it. Services on site include individual septic systems and wells. It's in the Spirit Lake Fire District. It's powered by Inland Power. It's in the West Bonner School District 83. And there's 2 different soils on site, Bonner Gravelly Ashley Silt Loam. All areas are prime farmland and it's well drained, and Kootenai Gravelly Ashley Silt Loam, which is prime farmland if irrigated and it's well drained. The file was reviewed by our certified floodplain manager, Jason Johnson, and he found that they're both within zone X, so 1 in 500 year chance of flooding, very minimal, not in flood zone A or AE. No further floodplain review was required because this is not a request for development. We routed the file to the following agencies on screen. We heard back from the Spirit Lake Fire District twice. First time was in July of 2021, and this was Tammy who wrote this. Per Chief DiBernardi, Quail Ridge was over density before the county passed 5-acre splits on Goldfinch Lane. Furthermore, this area does not meet access egress standards for the Idaho Adopted Fire Code. Those plots should not have been rezoned because the density has further increased. This is now a low volume area. Due to this overcrowding, the road ordinance requiring paved roads should be maintained throughout the area. DEQ said they have no environmental impact comments at this stage of the project. Kootenai Pend Oreille Sewer District indicated that it's outside the bounds. Independent Highway District, same kind of comment. We did hear back again for the Spirit Lake Fire District, and I apologize, the date on screen here is incorrect. I believe this was in March. We heard back from them and closer to the end of March. This was a second comment, again from Tammy, the assistant that works for the fire chief. Goldfinch needs to be held to the same paving standards as was required for the other 5-acre lots in the Quail Ridge subdivision. There is no secondary access egress to this property. Therefore, road access is even more important with the increased density and increased road volume. This is no longer a low density area. The following agencies on screen did not reply. And to date, I've checked the file again today before the hearing, no public comments in writing. These were the standards we used to review the file. And as staff, when we look at the zoning district that both properties are situated within, irregardless and irrespective of the fact that if the properties were to be split or not, they already have double density because they're zoned R5 and they're both 10-acre lots. And so they could build 2 single-family dwellings as is. And so staff does not anticipate that this change would be significant in that manner. So we did find it consistent with the Bonner County Revised Codes. We are recommending approval today as we did before. However, Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend unanimous denial. And at this point, I can take any questions.
Okay, commissioners, do you have any questions for staff?
What was planning and zoning's reasoning? Is there a way you can kind of,
I think harken back in 2021. Best I can. I'll do my best here. My understanding is, we did have some folks that came in person that were opposed to it during the hearing. And essentially, from what I recall, this is how it was written in the zoning ordinance. We need to keep it this way. And really, that was the explanation that I recall that was brought up during my motion to deny it.
thank you.
Mr. Bretzel, any questions for staff? Okay. Is the owner's representative the owner or the applicant here? Do you wish to speak? Okay. All righty, then we will go ahead and go to public comment. Anyone in favor, wish to speak in favor of this proposed file? Proposed file, it's an actual file, this proposal. Okay. Anyone neutral?
We're not letting you go on vacation.
I know, I tell you what. Week off, man, I gotta be retrained. Okay, anyone here that wishes to speak in opposition to this proposal? Oh, you guys are quiet today. Okay, well, with that, there's no need for rebuttal. We'll go ahead and close and go into deliberation. So I remember when we did the rezone on this and the requirement for paved roads.
I do
But
too.
But did we, I think we only included, was that only on the 5 acre sections on the lower end, I think?
That's the way I recall. I just want to kind of ask Bill a question if we can do that. Is like, there was some question of whether we should have done that in that process, the rezone process, or should have been done in the division process. And I just want to get some clarification on whether or not, because in my opinion, you know, when we go to the 5 acres, it seems like it's reasonable to ask for pavement, you know, when you have a large
Yeah, because of the density
area.
and the traffic counts.
Yeah.
So I think at the time, and you guys are well aware of the fact that we're in the process of adopting conditional rezoning ordinances that we can rely on.
Right.
But we didn't have that at the time. I think this was intended to be a notational amendment, as in a, something that was encouraged, but we didn't have the ability to require at the time. And somehow it was then included in the zoning ordinance language as a mandate. And so then the truth is that that really probably should have been handled at the division stage, the subdivision stage.
Which it
Using
wouldn't have
the-
been.
Which it wouldn't have been for MLDs, that's
Right.
correct.
So this is where we get into that
So
weird
that's, so we
quandary.
just, so I think that there was well-intended goals to kind of further what you are talking about, like when we're getting into smaller lots that we want to encourage, or that we want to have paved surface. But it was just probably not the, we didn't have the tools available at the time. And what was intended to be a notational suggestion became incorporated into the actual language of the zoning ordinance itself. Bill, does that sound fair?
Yeah, that's correct. It was intended to be a recommendation, but the way that it was written, the recommendation was written wasn't that. It said, you shall pave, these roads shall be done this way. It shouldn't have been written that way. It should have been may. It should have been permissive. That was the intent. That was the intent of the original language.
We even, I think, considered this as a potential scrivener's error. But because it was part of the adopted language of a zoning ordinance, I didn't feel comfortable going that route. And so this was, because you guys approved the previous zone change, or the ordinance itself, I felt that it would have to come before you again in order to change. Trying to be as faithful as we could to that process.
Go back to the
Sure.
map of the subdivision. So Peacock Lane is paved, and Barn Owl Drive is paved, and Songbird Way is paved. And all of those roads were paved as a part of this. They originally took Barn Owl Drive up where those two 10-acre parcels are. There was originally 8 or 10 10-acre parcels up there. And they were going to leave them as 10s. And so they weren't going to pave that. So they sold those first two 10-acre properties. Then they decided to change it all to 5s. And so then they came back and rezoned it, changed it all to 5s. But those first two properties had already been sold, but this was underway. And so somehow they got wrapped into the zone change because they were rezoned to R5, but they were left out of the paving process because they'd already been sold. And so the way that this is written right now, if they wanted to split that in half, they would be required to pave right in front of their driveway. This last year, we took the 2 20s above Goldfinch Lane and the one right next to that 10 and rezoned them to 5. We didn't require the paving around the corner because it's not allowed in the code as a condition.
Right.
So
Unless they decide to go ahead and do the actual split, and go down to 5s.
No,
they did.
not even them.
They've gone down to 5. Well,
This is one of those quandaries that
Right.
we know what we want.
But we don't have the.
But we don't have the vehicle to get there.
And I think that there was never any intent to have these broken down into 5s. And that may be where we, you know what I mean? Because they were left as 10s so they could get away from some of those more stringent. That's why they didn't include them as more 5s.
Oh, no, they had already sold them. Then they came back and did the.
No, oh, okay, so all of those fives were created after those tens
Yeah,
were
yeah,
sold.
we rezoned, all of
Okay.
Sunway,
Thank you,
Sunbird Way, all that got rezoned.
thank you for the clarification.
Can I just briefly?
You can.
I'm thinking back to the hearing too. A couple things they brought up was the concern over dust with increased traffic. However, the last time I've been to Goldfinch, they did like oil the gravel, and so that was a concern. And then also the fire chief's comments, they did discuss that as well. I do want to add though that there is a hammerhead very close to these lots, and so there is a turnaround for a fire truck right around that area.
So you're saying that if they don't want to drive on non-paved roads, they can turn around? Or what?
To say the option was afforded.
Truck dirty.
Yeah,
There.
well, and I really struggled with this even when we did it the first time, because it's like, what does pavement have to do with fire access?
Right. And that was.
I mean, I
that was-
struggled with
it was- It was Spirit Lake Fire that was pushing. the
Yeah, and it still is. But I don't know what that has to do with, I would say it's a width only thing. I mean, it's all about, can you access it?
Right.
And the answer is yes, so.
The unfortunate thing is this application is really about the roads. It's about the fact that we don't have the vehicle to have this.
I got
We
you.
need to correct
Thanks a lot, Milton.
it. Anytime I can.
Yeah, I know. It just doesn't seem that way.
So what are you saying? Fix it?
Please.
No, based on what I've heard from other attorney from Milton, it makes sense to go ahead and approve this. We don't have the vehicle yet to actually make a requirement. Yeah, maybe fives in the future, but what happens in the future is not what we're here to deal with today.
Well, and it doesn't even matter because if it's an MLD, it doesn't come up to the subdivision quality
So
or
those are my
standards.
comments.
I think all my questions have been answered. It's like,
We're in
yeah,
deliberation, so.
we definitely probably didn't do the right thing here.
Steve,
All right, you ready?
I'll entertain a motion unless you have a comment.
My comment would be, I'm gonna make a motion.
Okay. There we go.
All right, I move to approve this project file MOD 0005-21, requesting to remove the language from section 3, improvements, which states that divisions of land within the rezone boundaries described herein shall developed with roadways meeting the low volume private road standards set forth in Bonner County Revised Code Title 12, Appendix A, Section 2.5A. Such roadways shall be paved, and whereas the Board of County Commissioners did find that the zone change request ZC 36518 is in accordance with the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan, and have determined that future divisions of land within the rezone boundaries warrant paved surface low volume private roadways from ordinance number 575 for zone change file ZC 365-18. Finding that it is in accord with the general and specific objectives of Bonner County Comprehensive Plan, Bonner County Revised Code is enumerated in the following conclusions of law, and based upon the evidence submitted up to the time staff report was prepared and testimony received at this hearing. I further move to adopt findings, fact, and conclusions of law as set forth in the staff report, and direct planning staff to draft written findings and conclusions to reflect the motion. Have the chairman sign, transmit it to all interested parties. This action does not result in a taking of private property.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
It's like the world's longest
Roll
motion.
call, yeah, roll call vote.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Connolly?
Aye.
Commissioner Bradshaw?
Aye, your clerk, miss.
Okay, motion passes. Milton, there's a zone change ordinance motion in this?
That shouldn't be, right?
We need to update that zone change.
We do.
Ordinance, right? Correct. So we're changing the language of the ordinance. Yeah, to take out.
Okay, so then this is appropriate for the, yeah.
Okay.
Let's go ahead.
Actually adopt a new ordinance that is
Okay.
same in all respects, absent the language requiring paving.
Long way of saying, fix it.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve an ordinance of Bonner County, the number to be assigned, citing its authority and providing for an amendment of the official zoning map of Bonner County by reclassification of the lands located in section 21, township 54 for Yeah, North 4, Range West, what?
Township 54
4
North.
West, Boise Meridian,
Range West.
Bonner County, providing for an effective date. I further move to authorize the chair to sign the official supplementary zoning map upon publication of the ordinance.
I would second that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a motion in a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Conley?
Aye.
Commissioner Bradshaw?
Aye, ma'am.
A motion is approved, and it's also been proven that we will read anything put in front of us.
Yes, we
Regardless.
will. Again,
Regardless of the order of the words. Okay, so that retires. that
doesn't matter if
file.
it's right, we read it anyway.
Let's move on. Let's go ahead and move on to MOD 0010-21. Bill did that on purpose.
Oh, I'm sure he did.
He's like that, you know.
He's been blamed for a lot worse, so.
That was definitely me.
Hey, we have internet link.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you can begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Thanks, Commissioners. Chad, for the record, thanks for public for showing up today, participating. This is for a Spires PUD modification request. They are requesting to modify the original plan unit development, adding note 4 to condition A7, item C. Setbacks to read the following quote, authorization to deviate further from these standards shall be approved by the homeowners association board of directors on a case-by-case basis, close quote. And this is specifically for setbacks, property line setbacks. On screen here, we can see the Spires PUD and what it encompasses up there at Schweitzer. It's in the plan unit development is in the Alpine Community Comprehensive Land Use Plan designation, the Alpine Village Zoning District. Access is by a variety of privately owned and maintained roads. Services on site include Mountain Utility Company, Spires Water Company, Schweitzer Fire. It's powered by Northern Lights, and it's in the Lake Pend Oreille School District 84. Quite a bit of steep slopes on the property. Variety of mixed soils on site, characterized as broadly speaking, not prime farmland. There are no map wetlands or streams. The property was evaluated for the flood zone by, again, our certified floodplain manager, Jason Johnson, found to be in zone X. Again, very minimal chance of flooding there, 1 in 500 years. And also zone D, which means it's unstudied, unknown flood risk. No further floodplain review was required, though, again, because this is a request to modify a plan unit development, not a request for development at this time. These were the standards we used to review the file. Just kind of going through those standards here. The board shall consider the proposed modification in accordance with the requirements for the original permit application and shall confine the review to the proposed modification. The applicant was requesting the PUD modification essentially to allow for further deviations from the setbacks that have been established. Staff found that in general, it's not unusual for a plan unit development to go through modifications in the future as things kind of evolve. Staff is requiring that at any time someone wishes to deviate from the setbacks established by the planning and development, that the homeowners association draft a letter indicating as such for our permit technicians to review. So they have that kind of assurance that, hey, we're deviating further from that required setback. Just explaining the reason for the modification, there's steep topography. And as I recall during the last hearing, Mitch Martin, the applicant, indicated that essentially the reason for this request is there's some common open space in the homeowners association owns. And this would essentially allow for some of those, eaves and roof lines to get closer to that common open space than the required setback due to the kind of limited building envelope in some of these areas because of that topography. Staff found this request reasonable. Again, we're requiring that signed letter from the homeowners association allowing for that further deviation before we approve of further increase in setback deviations. These were the agencies we routed the file to for comment. Independent Highway District, in summary, just said that Spires has its own private roads. We don't really have any jurisdiction. Panhandle Health District, I I think they're a little confused in terms of what the setback request is for. It's for property line setbacks. It's not for septic setbacks. So they just said it wasn't really entirely clear. They sent a second letter. I spoke to someone on the phone because the first letter was they were looking at site evaluations that they've done up there. And so I tried to clarify that on the phone. Fish and Game said they have no comments. All other agencies didn't respond, didn't receive any public comments. Staff did find that the request to modify the planning and development is consistent with the Bonner County Revised Code. Staff is recommending approval, and during the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing, they did recommend unanimous approval today for the board. At this time, I can take any questions, but before, I should go over conditions very quickly here of approval. The modification shouldn't supersede any deed restrictions. The permit shall expire if it's not issued within 2 years. Prior to the time in which a building location permit is reviewed, any landowner deviating from the setbacks established in the planning and development should provide that letter from the homeowners association. And then lastly, and this is just kind of a reminder to the applicant and, the issuance document, that Bonner County will not approve of anything encroaching over a property line, and that they'll have to get a boundary line adjustment or a lot line adjustment as necessary. And now I can take questions.
Okay, gentlemen, questions for staff?
Lights or fire? What a fire?
I don't believe so.
So a little more history on the Spires. When they turned in when they did their PUD originally, they included that setbacks would vary for lots based on the type of lot that it was. And they had these diagrams, A, B, and C. When that went to final, that page of the diagrams never made it into the final documents that were approved or recorded. And then additionally, they never made it into the CCNRs. And so we have folks come and want to build, and it calls out these diagrams, and nobody could find them or prove which was really there. And so Spires came up with this alternative that would best answer the question for them, would best take care of the situation for them. What happens is they created ski-through lots. So there's easements around all of the lots, or there's common property around all of the lots, so you can ski down to the ski resort from your house. And so they want to be able to allow decreased setbacks up against that common property. So it's their property. They do have architectural review guidelines in place. They will review and approve what the setback should be for each structure.
It's a pretty good explanation there.
Any questions for Milton? Okay. Is there someone from the owner or the representative here that wants to speak? Okay. All righty, well, let's go ahead and go to anybody in favor, wish to speak in favor. Somebody's hand up in there? No,
There's a hand.
it's like,
Oh, that's the
oh, that's the mouse.
That's the mouse.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Never mind.
You don't have it, but
Okay, perfect. Let's go. Anybody neutral?
You get to be neutral.
One of you ladies want to be neutral?
Sure.
It might just
Get
actually
up
make
and
my day if
speak
someone's
then.
neutral.
Just say,
It's like,
I'm neutral.
ooh.
Okay. Seeing none, how about opposed? Anybody opposed? Okay, we'll go ahead and close, go to deliberation. Yeah, Milton's explanation made perfect sense.
Which is unusual.
Yeah, I know. I was shocked as well.
Yeah, we actually understood it.
Really shocked. I'm gonna go out and buy a lottery.
He's starting to get scary.
Sorry,
Okay,
Milton.
never mind.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, I got nothing else. I don't see an issue with this. Makes perfect sense, especially in light of the information provided by our planning director. Guys, anything?
So are these motions the same? I've got one here.
No, I think this
yes,
is the
yes,
updated one.
Update it.
That is an
Oh,
updated
Yeah.
version.
no typo testing us out.
Yeah, yeah, the updated one's actually longer.
Yeah. This one yours?
If there's
'Cause
no
I found
further-
the last one up, so it must be yours.
If there's no further deliberation, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion for approval.
All right. I move to approve this project file MOD 0010-21 requesting 22. We're going to do a ballet on this one, I guess. Modify the conditional use permit for Spires Plan Unit Development to add note number 4 to condition A-7, item C, setbacks to file C892-07 to include the following. 4, authorization to deviate further from these standards shall be approved by the Homeowners Association Board of Directors on a case-by-case basis, finding that it is in accord with the general and specific objectives of Bonner County Comprehensive Plan and Bonner County Revised Code as enumerated in the following conclusions of law. And based upon the evidence submitted up to the time the staff report was prepared, the testimonies received at this hearing, I further move to adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law as set forth in the staff report and direct planning staff to draft written findings and conclusions to reflect this motion. Have the chairman sign, transmit to all interested parties the action that could be taken to obtain the request to modify the Spires PUD conditional use permit is to complete the conditions and approval as adopted. This action does not result in a taking of private property.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Connolly?
Aye.
Commissioner Bradshaw?
Aye, ma'am.
Okay, motion's approved. Is it my imagination or are the motions getting longer?
There's a lot of length. Oh, it's Bill.
Bill's fault.
They're
Is it
exceptionally
the
long.
attorney's fault again? Okay, so
Hey,
that'll,
you don't have to read all the findings.
Well,
You can do
that's
that.
true. No,
I got up
You
at
can do that.
4:30
You can
yesterday
make us do
morning,
that?
so
Well, you-
They seem long to me.
Anyway, so that will conclude that file. That will conclude that file. Let's move on to the last file, AM 0001-22 and ZC 0002-22, and staff may begin whenever they are ready.
Thanks, Commissioners. Chad, for the record, planning staff. We're here to discuss a comprehensive land use plan amendment and zone change for 3 lots in section 32, Township 58 North, Range 1 West. These are the 3 properties in question. The applicant is requesting that the comprehensive land use plan be amended from Ag Forest 1020 to rural residential 510 and zoning from Ag Forest 10 acre to rural 5 acre. So the site, we're looking at 3 lots, 3 platted lots, James lots 1, 2, and 3. Access is by Loose Horse Lane, which is privately owned and maintained. Services on site include individual septic systems, Odin Water, Northside, it's in the Northside Fire District. It's powered by Avista Utilities, and it's in the Lake Pend School District 84. Environmental features on site include intermittent streams, freshwater forested shrub wetland. There are no map slopes between 15 to 29% or 30% or greater. Soils on site are mixed. One is prime farmland if drained, and it's somewhat poorly drained. And the other is not prime farmland, but it is well drained. These are the standards we use to review the file. We routed to the following agencies on screen. Panhandle Health District, and this is just a summary of their letter, indicated that no site evaluation has been completed for the properties. Encourages the applicant to contact them. Army Corps of Engineers, in summary, they strongly encourage the applicant to contact them prior to developing the property just due to the wetlands running through all 3 of them. Idaho Department of Environmental Quality said they don't review projects on a project-specific basis. This is a pretty generic comment we often get from them. Idaho Transportation Department made no comment. Idaho Department of Fish and Game, no comment. All other agencies did not reply. We received 3 public comments broadly in support of the request. Basically, indicating that they support the request for the change, and that it would allow them to split it down for their families. My understanding is, in conversations with the applicant, is currently these properties are being cohabited. And so there's basically multiple families living on them. So this would allow for them to split it off and give it to family. And so these three comments were kind of supportive of that. I did go out to the site and took some photos of the existing road to give the commissioners kind of a better idea of what we're looking at today. Loose Horse Lane is certainly, privately owned and maintained. The road condition certainly wasn't the worst, wasn't the absolute best, but it was pretty good. And we'll hear from the applicant a little bit more today about that, kind of go into more detail about the history of this road. Looking at the comprehensive land use plan, the ag forest land designation recognizes areas where steeper slopes prevail. Transportation is provided by private roads or U.S. Forest Service or state roads. Urban services are not available, and residential development challenges are present due to slope, poor soil conditions, hazard areas, and lack of police or fire services. The properties are afforded police services by Bonner County Sheriff's Department. It's in the Northside Fire District. They have fire services. The soil conditions on site aren't the greatest. The hazardous areas, there really is no steeper slopes that prevail on the properties. Yes, it is accessed by a private road. However, based on kind of research that I've done, and I'm sure we'll hear more from the applicant, Northside Fire did comment twice on previous subdivisions in this area, saying that they had no issue with the road. So just kind of note that. And finally, Odin Water currently provides water to these properties. And I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but basically the code allows for subdivisions of down to 1 acre where urban water is available in the suburban and rec zoning districts. So just kind of noting that. So the applicant, of course, is proposing to move to the rural residential comprehensive land use plan designation. Staff did find this consistent with this request. Steeper slopes don't prevail on the property. They do contain mapped wetlands, but the county does have setbacks established for those, as well as any kind of stream system to ensure that those remain protected. Small scale agricultural and residential developments do still remain viable on all 3 lots, and they are afforded, again, those services, emergency services. So looking at the current land use, the zoning designation, AF10 is in areas designated as ag forest land in the comp plan that don't feature prime ag soils, but where prime agricultural and forestry pursuits remain viable. These areas may be within or adjacent to areas of city impact, or where lands are afforded fire protection, access to standard roads or other services. And again, the analysis is pretty similar here. I would note though, and I should kind of harken back to agency comment, this area is within the area of city impact for Kootenai. And we did receive a response from Kootenai. And essentially, if I'm to sum up this letter, their concern was the road and then also their comprehensive land use plan designation that they envision their future of being, if they were to expand out to this area at some point in the future. And they did indicate in this letter that if that were to happen, that essentially these properties would be non-conforming from their comprehensive plan or their vision of their future expanding into this area. So I just want to note that for the record. In my PowerPoint slide, I recognize that I missed it too. It is in the staff report though. So they're proposing, again, rural 5 acre zoning district. And, when I review this, I look at a couple things. I look at services, I look at hazardous areas, and then I also look at kind of the dwelling units per acre density that are around the area. And I would note that there are other properties that are actually at 5 acres or below that substantially right next to these properties. I think like 2.5 and 3 that have 1 dwelling unit. And so when we look at the rural 5 acre zoning district, it essentially makes that distinction between doesn't meet the criteria for R10 or developed at or near 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres. Yes, Bill.
Are those, it's kind of hard to read on this map with these little
Yeah.
red deals here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those are plus and minuses in front of those numbers, right? So all these ones to the right of it are 4, 2, there's one down there that says 1.6.
That is correct. Yep.
So how do those, so those are 1.6, but they're in, are those,
They are in the ag forest 10 acre zoning district.
and these guys are only 5. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes,
Double check.
the lots in front of you, yes, are requesting 5 acres.
Okay.
So I do have a question. I don't know if you're done.
Oh, that's okay.
33 acres. Why is that going to 5? Because I mean, there's 3 lots, right? And
That's correct. So they can split the properties for family essentially, because right now there's 3 different 10-acre properties, give or take, that we're looking at today.
oh, so this is the way it exists now.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, it was really close. So, but staff did find this consistent with the Bonner County Revised Code. Staff recommended approval before the Planning and Zoning Commission, and is recommending approval today. The Planning and Zoning Commission did unanimously deny this request, or recommend denial rather. And the reasons for that being is looking at the code for the R5 designation, looking at that density per 5 acres. One of the things that specifically Commissioner Franken brought up was, that the code doesn't really differentiate between legal non-conforming and legal conforming properties, but that doesn't preclude staff from using that analysis. But he still wasn't happy with it. And so that was part of his kind of thought process there. And I think, Commissioner Davis agreed with that. And so they motioned to essentially recommend denial for the comprehensive land use plan designation. And then as a consequence of that, they found that the zone change request was also not consistent because the comp plan designation wasn't consistent. And so that was the basis of their recommendation for denial for the zone change, just for context for the commissioners. At this point, I can take any questions.
Okay, gentlemen, do you have any questions for staff? Other than what's already been asked?
I have one follow-up question from there. So you're saying that the planning or the commission didn't want to use non-conforming lots
To compare
to
to.
compare with for adjacent lots at or below 5 acres per, is that correct?
Right, that's correct.
Okay, so then when we look at that code, does the code distinguish between those at all, or get?
I don't believe so, because it says right here, this is actually pretty much a direct quote here, Bill. It says, yeah, R5 and designated rural residential in the comp plan that are already developed at or near 1 dwelling unit per 5 acre density. So they aren't, right.
Right, whether it's non-conforming
All
or.
right, I want to make
Right,
sure to
that's correct.
understand what's going on. Just trying to make sure I can give you.
No,
all the
good.
advice.
I was gonna give you. a hard
So there's a
time.
potential for up to 6 parcels.
That's correct. 6 lots, yeah.
Good. Any other questions for staff?
No, Bill answered it.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Is the applicant or applicant's representative here? Make sure you identify your name for the record. Good. I want to say you may approach the bench. Well, this is quasi judicial.
Makes him feel good. Makes him feel important.
I know he wants a room.
Just up and down there.
Well, it's not like I say,
Or
not like I
actually
said
side,
you can
yeah.
kiss the ring or anything. It was just you can approach the bench.
He just wants a wig.
Yeah.
A wig.
You may speak.
I actually need one. Just getting vacant up there.
Thank you, commissioners. My name is Kaylee Miller for the record, and I'm here representing my family as well as their neighbors to the south, the Shaws, in this request for a zoning map amendment as well as a comprehensive plan map amendment. I'm a visual person, so excuse my PowerPoint, but I think that's the easiest way for me to get through all of it. So with this comprehensive plan map amendment, we're currently in an area that is designated for ag forest, and we are requesting that that be changed to rural residential, and with the zone change from ag forest 10 to rural 5. The purpose of this request is really affordable housing. As you know, affordable housing in this area is no longer affordable to local families. And so they are wanting to divide this land in order to accommodate the ability for their children to develop on that site as well as them. And part of that need to divide is for financing purposes. When you look at going out to get a construction loan, you need to have your own individual described property in order to encumber it. So just for orientation purposes, you can see where that property is located in blue. It's about 1 mile from Highway 200 and about 1.9 miles from the Kootenai city limits as the road travels. The site plan in the area, and as Chad pointed out, there are many properties within the vicinity of this that are actually substandard currently. All of the properties that are located immediately to the east and to the south, they range in size from 1.5 acres on up to about 4.65. So if this property were to be divided in the future, just for orientation purposes, this is what that might look like. The lots have not been designed at this time. But I just wanted to show you that as the property functions, especially the central lot, lot 2, it's essentially divided by topography. There's an existing home on the east side of that property, and then there's the drainage through the middle, which is a relatively large elevation drop. Traveling up the west side and in, there's a flat location that would be available for development without essentially any change to the way that the area functions. The other 2 lots have larger flat areas that are along that western side, and you can see that they could be divided in that location. Just for some background, my family has owned this property since 1988 in one form or another. It started with my uncle and my grandparents and moved on through my parents. In 2003, a Servine plat was done that divided the original acreage into 2 parcels, 2 lots, and that was for financing purposes. Following that, my uncle vacated the property and my parents moved out there. And in 2006, they went through the Jamie's Lots plat process in order to create 3 lots out of that. And in order to do that, to reach the 30 acres, they acquired additional land so that they would have enough to have 3 10-acre parcels. That application was originally submitted as Servine First Edition. And I say that because you'll see that on the fire district comments that I provide later. And it was renamed prior to recordation. That oftentimes happens when names are too similar. The property was zoned agriculture for 10-acre minimums at the time of all of these divisions. And I think that's important to mention because during the Planning Commission meeting, they did ask if this property was always zoned 10-acre minimums or if it had previously been zone 5. And logically, that would make sense that it was zone 5 at some point in time. And so that's the advice that staff gave them, was that they assumed it had been, which is actually inaccurate. This property has been zoned for agriculture of 10 acres all the way back to 1978 when this county adopted its first zoning ordinance. During their deliberations, they implied that the landowners missed the boat by not dividing it to 5 acres at the time when they assumed it was zoned that way, as it was never zoned that way. That's inaccurate information, and that was part of the basis for their decision, in my opinion. These are a couple of those older zoning maps. You can see in 2010, it was zoned agriculture, and then also on the 2005 zoning map. And that was the oldest map that I could get copies of from staff at this time. So in 2008, just to note, I think it's important to recognize that when the county went through their ad hoc process and they reviewed all of the zoning, they considered most of the area to the south in the next section down, which is section 6, to be an area that should be designed for suburban and urban growth. And in 2013, the Omets realized that and recognized that the suburban zoning designation didn't allow for the agricultural pursuits that they wanted to see, and nor did they want properties around them developed at that level. And so they went out and sought many property owners to participate in an application. There was about 50 parcels in all that were included in that. Many of those properties were also within the area of city impact for Kootenai. And their request was to downzone those properties from suburban to a mix of rural 5 and ag forest 10. About a 50-50 mix. And that application stated that their purpose was to establish the rural residential and small acreage farming and commercial agricultural opportunities consistent with past and ongoing activities in this area. And I think that's important to note because testimony was given at the Planning and Zoning Commission level that indicated that rural 5 properties are not consistent with agricultural development. And it was actually provided by Mr. Omet himself, who made the application that changed many properties to that same designation for that purpose. So just so you can see what that looks like, the property in question is outlined in blue, and that red line is the section line. So it's about 3 parcels to the south of where this property is, where they actually had zoned it for suburban, which with the current public utilities that are available and public services would have been allowed to develop at a rate of 1 per 1 acre. So these lots currently are ranging in size from 10.01 acres to 11.52. They're developed currently with 1 home on each lot. A couple of them have occupied RVs from time to time on them, so are essentially functioning at a rate of 2 residential units per 10 acres. They are currently being cohabitated. My sister is currently living on site with my parents along with her children, and that's part of this request, is to be able to provide her a space for her to build her own home. The property is located only a mile from the state highway and about 1.9 miles from the Kootenai city limits. And again, properties surrounding it are much, much smaller to the east and to the south, and then with larger to the north and to the west. The property contains a series of benches that are overlooking draws and subtle ravines. And there are intermittent streams that run along the west boundary and then through the center of lot 2 or the east boundary of lots 1 and 3. The slopes do not exceed 15% in grade, but they do drop down significantly in elevation to those areas. And there are wetlands that run along those lower portions of the property, as well as intermittent streams. However, there is no map floodplain. So what this looks like, you can see the red dots on the screen. This is where the existing residential units are. The blue dots indicate where potential residential development might occur. Those developments need to be clustered based on the topography of the site. And you can see that on the image to the right. You can see the land that drops down to the draws and then the areas where those intermittent streams are in the lowlands. It shows best on the Jamie's Lots plat. You can see the wetlands within the areas that sort of have the grass identification. And you can see through the center. You can see through the center of lot 2, the road wraps around and cuts that existing lot in half. Access to the site for the subdivision as a whole, really, it actually has direct access to Shingle Mill Road via Loose Horse Lane. And I say that because the way that Loose Horse Lane was reserved is different than in most cases. Typically, it's through dedication of a public right-of-way or reservation of an easement. In this case, they dedicated Loose Horse Lane to all of the lot owners within the plat. So they all have common ownership within that road, and that road directly accesses Shingle Mill. The homes themselves are accessed off of a gravel private drive that was upgraded to private road standards and international fire code at the time of the Jamie's Lot subdivision. That is a requirement anytime you're serving 3 or more lots, or was at that time, and inspections would have had to have been completed prior to recordation of the final plat. It is within a 60-foot wide easement, and I would note that that 60-foot wide easement is actually wider than the right-of-way for Shingle Mill Road, which is the county road right-of-way that it adjusts or it is adjacent to. And we did receive out of old files through a public records request copies of letters that were written by Northside Fire at each of those prior plot stages that indicated that they had inspected the road and that they had no concerns about the ability to safely access that in the event of a fire. Property is served by public services. The county road, if you consider that being Shingle Mill, Odin Water, all 3 lots have existing connections. That was another misconception that was taken by the Planning Commission during their meeting. Mr. Almond testified that Odin Water no longer was accepting applications for hookups. I did contact them following that meeting. That's not true. This year, they did not allow any new hookups. They are pursuing opportunities to expand that system, but they are still accepting applications. And Ms. Polstra, who is sort of the administrator for that, indicated that they usually, when they take applications, take about 15 at a time. We did submit one. We're number 15 on the list, but she indicated that many of those applications that are ahead of it could not actually be served because the infrastructure was inadequate, but there was adequate infrastructure to add additional hookups in this location. Northside Fire District services this site. They're about 2.5 miles from the nearest facility. Bonner County Ambulance District, they're again about 2.5 miles from the nearest ambulance facility. And Avista services for power, but not only power, for natural gas, which is a fairly urban service. And then they receive phone service and are serviced by the Lake Padre School District. I know that these were reviewed by staff, but I kind of want to go through them again. So the comp plan designation of the Ag Forestry and Ag F10 zoning district. So I have kind of color coded these, and it's hard to see on the screen, but the orange are the areas that I feel were not met, and the green are the areas that I feel that the project site complied with. So the first is that it's designed to establish agricultural forestry pursuits. So livestock production, forestry, horticulture, floriculture, accessory uses that are necessary for treating, storing, or processing those types of activities. And they're designed to maintain the rural character by protecting forestry and woodlands, as well as viable agricultural pursuits. While there are some large acreage farms in the site, that is by and far not the most common nearest to this property. The rural residential parcels are much more common. The subject properties are not viable farmland due to the existing development, topography, wetlands, and really poorly drained soils. At times during the year, you'll see water standing on some of these sites till midsummer, and the site's not actively being harvested for timber. To establish rural residential density limits and retain area size for efficient farming. Again, they're not sized for efficient farming as they are currently zoned. And so reducing that to 5-acre minimum would not cause any degradation to that. Allowing for agricultural production and limiting non-ag uses to those compatible. Rural residential density is not more or less compatible with agricultural pursuits than a 10-acre parcel is. And again, they are not viable for those pursuits as it is. For use of the agricultural forestry zoning designation of 10, the properties are to contain prime egg soils and where agricultural and forestry remains viable. Again, these sites are not viable for those uses. And they have a mix of soils, one of which is mission silty loam, which can be a prime egg soil, but only when it's properly drained. And this ground stays saturated much of the year and is very poorly drained. The final one being that it may be within or adjacent to areas of city impact. And this property is in fact adjacent to that, but so were many of the other properties that were zoned to rural 5 through that previous application considered by the county. The area does have fire protection, but it also has many other urban services such as Odin Water and public services in almost every category. For the rural residential map designation, it's established to allow for low density residential uses that are compatible with rural pursuits, limiting densities to permitted uses and to those that are compatible with rural character and supported by rural services. We'd like to develop these lots at a rate of 1 home per 5 acres. The surrounding properties to the east and the south are more non-conforming than that. They're much smaller lots. And most of them are substandard lots that were grandfathered in and have been functioning in that area and living harmoniously with the agricultural uses for decades. And it is consistent with most of the Sully Valley to see pockets of areas that were developed at a much higher rate than is currently being allowed through those zoning designations. It's to allow for small scale farming and forestry activities. In this case, that includes things like hobby farms, 4-H animals, horses. They're small scale. You're not producing for agricultural purposes. And that is occurring on at least one of these lots. My nephews have 4-H animals and my sister has horses out there. Though there is no recreation occurring other than private equestrian activities. It is to encourage conservation development configurations that encourage open space and farming areas that protect sensitive environmental areas and reduce infrastructure costs. This is exactly what we're trying to do with this project. Due to the topography and the sensitive environmental areas, the way that the land lays out, the only eligible areas for division are clustered together, and it leaves all of the sensitive areas untouched with development. The properties in this area are accessed by a private drive as they exist. And that private drive comes off of an existing county road, and they're very close to the highway network as well. They have all of the public services other than that public road directly to their driveways, which is water, gas, power infrastructure. And those were already installed in Loose Horse Lane when the original development occurred. So no extension needed. For the rural 5 designation, it says areas designated for rural residential by the comp plan. So in this case, it's our hope that that will be approved and will be compliant with that and receive that approval as well as the rural 5 designation. Areas developed at a rate of 1 per 5 acres is the hope. And while this subject property isn't officially developed at a rate of 1 per 5 acres, there are multi-families living on each site. There are occupied RVs. So they're essentially functioning at that level. And the properties, approximately 50 acres worth of them to the south and to the east, are developed at a rate of 1 per 5 acres or more. And then the final category being that it does not meet the rural 10 criteria, which is as follows. It's characterized by slopes in excess of 30%. The site is not located within critical wildlife habitat. The Bonner County Critical Wildlife Habitat map indicates that there is no critical wildlife habitat on this site. There were comments in the Army Corps statements that did say that there are a number of species in the area that may be threatened or endangered. This property is very close to Lake Pend Oreille and Boyer Slough, so it's likely that those are the areas. It did not identify this property specifically, and it's typically boilerplate language. And then the final, or the next being that they contain prime egg soils. This again does not have prime egg soils as they are not properly drained. And it's served by a network of public or private roads. This is the only rural 10 criteria that this site actually meets. And the property being within the floodway, it is not, and containing limited access to public services, which this site is not. It has access to those public services installed or readily available. Agency comments that were received, they did touch on the area of city impact comments from the city of Kootenai. I would throw out there that there is no agreement between Bonner County and the city of Kootenai that states that you would comply with any of their requirements for their future zoning designations. And so while we welcome their comments, they're not regulatory. They're just providing their feedback, and Bonner County code would prevail. They also stated that Jamie's Lots has 1 entrance via Loose Horse Lane. Yes, that's accurate, and it has been approved by the emergency services folks. stating that it is compliant. They stated that increased development could negatively impact the wetlands. That falls under the jurisdiction of the Army Corps and will be dealt with at the time of development. The current application does not propose any development that would be reviewed at the time of subdivision. And the proposal does not depict future lot lines and states that they're currently served by Odin Water and individual septics. That is accurate. They are served by individual septics and Odin Water, and lot development and design will occur once we know whether or not we can pursue that option. Army Corps of Engineers and DEQ provided just standard blanket language. Idaho Fish and Game and the Transportation Department both said no comment, and Panhandle Health noted that they had not received an application for development. That is true because we wouldn't apply for that until we know whether or not development can occur. This application was routed twice to all the neighboring property owners within 300 feet of the outer boundaries. We received only 3 written comments, which were all in favor and are depicted with the purple dots on the screen. There was 2 members of the public who testified at the Planning Commission level in opposition. There are the blue dots. And it was primarily directed at issues with the plan, issues with the area of city impact, not specific to this project. They even opened their comments stating that it was more directed at the plan, not at the project. Just a couple of the comprehensive plan goals that I wanted to point out. Property rights. The issue of property rights is a two-way street, and the property rights of the applicant, adjoining landowners, future generations shall be considered, as well as short-term consequences of these decisions. The members of the public who spoke out at the last meeting were worried about the protection of their rights and their ability to enjoy their sites. I think that it is an equal offset to that, that these property owners be able to develop their sites and enjoy their family being there with them and have multi-generational development, as was historically in the community. Bonner County intends to balance and integrate its land use policies and proposed land use map with the components of the comprehensive plan to encourage the community to grow while retaining its rural character and protecting its unique natural resources. I think that's exactly what we're doing here. They're asking to be allowed to develop at a rate of 1.5 acres. They're going to be able to cluster those developments and protect those natural resources that are flowing through the lowlands. And then future development should provide adequate services and not adversely impact services or utilities for present day users. In this case, those utilities are already in place. There is no impact and there's no extension of any sort of public utilities that would need to be maintained. So in conclusion, as you know, we're in an affordable housing crisis right now. And by allowing development in pockets at a rural density throughout the county that are consistent with historic development patterns and in locations where they're adequately served by existing public services and don't create a need for additional infrastructure expansion, we allow those to be placed in pockets. And by doing so, we preserve large scale agricultural land that surrounds that, which I think meets the objectives of the folks that are in that area. Based on the provided analysis, I found that the property is far more compatible with a rural residential designation in the Rural 5 zoning district, and staff agreed through their recommendations, and we respectfully request approval.
So clearly, this is the first time you've ever presented a planning file.
Oh, she
I
can
found,
talk,
I found the presentation lacking a lot of information. I don't know about you guys.
talk pretty fast too.
That was cool.
Could you elaborate on?
Well,
If you want me to, I can talk all day.
She was fast, but she articulated it absolutely.
Yeah.
Understand.
She barely took a
These guys
breath.
are a lot older than I am, so they're that area. Any questions for the owner's representative? She's the owner.
I don't think he's left.
Yeah, could you repeat that?
I don't
We
know.
can start at the beginning and go again.
Yeah,
that's
no, they're good.
That's fine. I don't want it to crowd, I don't want it to crowd into
No, you-
tomorrow, so.
You covered, I was gonna ask the question of where the letters, landed, and you showed that. That's all great information.
So no questions.
Good job.
I don't have any questions at the moment.
Okay, let's go to anyone opposed, or let's go to anyone in favor, other than those that have already spoken in favor. Anyone neutral? Ron, you want to be neutral today? We never have a neutral person. Okay.
Get on up here. Your claim to fame.
Yeah. Okay, anyone opposed? Wish to speak? Go ahead and come forward, and you can use that mic right there, and just make sure you identify yourself for the record.
That's a hard act to follow.
Yeah.
I'm Kirsten Davidson, and we live in the property just south. We own 18 acres that's adjacent to the lots in question. And I want to just say that there are several other neighbors that wanted to be here today, that were at the other meeting but have not been able to come because it's in the middle of the day, it's on a Wednesday, it's a difficult time. So
Letter to.
yeah, I realize that. I just wanted to say my husband and I oppose this zone change and comprehensive plan designation change. We purchased the 18 acres adjacent to these properties in question back in 2010. After living in a high density packed neighborhood for many years, we wanted to move where we would have more space for our family and the ability to grow and do things that we can't on smaller acreage. We found the 10-acre agricultural minimum of Selly Valley perfect for our needs, as its objective is to, and I quote, preserve, protect, and maintain areas that are rural in character where viable agricultural pursuits can be economically feasible. We knew the property that we purchased was adjacent to a bunch of smaller lots, but we assumed that those were grandfathered in and that the comprehensive plan would not allow for more of that to happen. Our property gives us opportunity to have over 40 fruit trees, a large garden, which feeds our family during the growing season with extras to sell or give away. About 3 acres of our property is pasture area, and over 14 acres of our property is designated as forest land and covered by a forest exemption. This is the property that will be most affected by these property changes. Our forested acreage and the forested area surrounding them are a buffer from the urbanization that's taking place in our community. It's full of wildlife. It's a place where children go camping. It's where we hike. It's where we snowshoe in the winter. It's where we spend a lot of time with peace and quiet. But if you change the designation from ag forest to rural residential and reduce the zoning down to 5 acres, it has the potential to greatly impact our forested property. Where there are currently only a few homes on the property in question, the proposed changes could mean the possibility of 10 additional homes, 4 more homes, and 6 ADUs. This could mean a severe reduction in the amount of forested area adjacent to our property as land is cleared for building. This could also mean a steep increase in the traffic down Shingle Mill and, more importantly, on the access road, which partially lies and borders our property. It actually goes right on the edge of our property. There's also the question of water. They say own water has hookups, but is there enough to support this continued growth? We understand that one motivation is to make this change would be to have property for our children. Prices are rising, and we certainly know that younger buyers are priced out of the market. This would be a motivation for us as well. We have 4 children, 2 in college, and we would love for them to come back and have property here. But where does it end? We keep chopping and chopping and chopping. If we give an exemption here, we change a zone there, soon everything gets more and more chopped up. The Selly Valley, as we know it, will not exist anymore. The rural nature will change. We have a comprehensive plan in place. Let's stick with the plan. If we need to make changes to the plan because of the needs of the community, then let's change the plan. But making exceptions on an individual basis does not support the plan that we have in place. And I would like that to stop, that we keep chopping and chopping and chopping and make a grand plan that works for the needs that we have going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition? Seeing none, time for rebuttal. You want to rebuttal? Please. You can do it from there if you want. You have to go all the way up.
So I would just point out that the Davidson property actually consists of 2 parcels of land, one of which is about 3.5 acres. So it's a substandard lot, and it is developed with 2 residential units, which is at a rate of less than 1 per 10 acres, similar to what this request is asking for granting.
No, ma'am. You can't, yeah, once you're done, you're done.
Davidson, is that her?
The portion of their property that directly abuts the subject property is actually a low-lying area where the creek is. It's unavailable for development, and an area that is inaccessible by vehicular traffic. So it's a solely recreational area. And based on the topography and the way that the road actually runs through their property, which I understand is hard to see on a map, the traffic would not impact them. They would not actually be able to see it from their residential unit. There's existing timber on both their property and on the subject properties that would provide that buffer. And quite frankly, the traffic that would be created by this request is actually already existing on site.
Staff, do you feel the need to rebut? Okay. Gentlemen, do you have any questions before we go into deliberation?
Yeah,
Or do you want to just talk about it during deliberation?
yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and close public comment, and go into deliberation? Yeah, I had some heartburn with the planning and zoning's ruling on this. For the life of me, couldn't figure out where they came up with it. When you look at the surrounding areas and parts of the non-conforming lots up front that are dramatically smaller, looking at some of the issues that could be possible, technically already exist as far as traffic goes. Wildlife, I can tell you that wildlife wise, wildlife doesn't care. In fact, they like it when humans are around. You come to my house and watch them eat my wife's flowers and get into my garden. That's why I have 8-foot high fences.
And they enjoy it.
Yeah, and they do enjoy it. Increased traffic, we already talked about. The traffic exists that potentially be the increase. Rural nature is always thrown around, and 5 acres is designated rural. It's right there in our ordinances, right there in our comp plan. As far as chopping things up, and this has always becomes a concern. It is supported by the Local Land Use Planning Act. There is an ability for landowners that believe that their property is improperly zoned to petition for a zone change if they can prove it, have it legally approved. And that's what we're dealing with today, both with the comp plan change and the zone change. So all those things are actually built into the cake, and it falls into private property rights, which I think is one of my pet issues, is that while everyone has their own private property rights, as long as this applicant isn't impeding on the neighbor's private property rights, and to do that would require them to become a nuisance of sorts, which it appears they won't be, or literally, build across the property line, which would be a problem to begin with. I don't see the impact on neighboring private property rights, especially in light of the fact of the density that already exists there. When you look at the,
You gonna leave anything for the rest of it?
yeah, well, we're gonna deal with, so we need to deal with the comp plan.
That's it. That's,
The comp plan change first, and then we'll deal with the zone change next.
and
So,
I would note, Dan, real quick, not to interrupt, but I do want to note that in the staff report, that when you're dealing with the comp plan, you're looking at the goals and objectives. And in the staff report, they have done a very good job of highlighting the several applicable portions of the comprehensive plan for your guys' consideration. And that, if you're inclined to follow those and you move to adopt, then that would be incorporated. But I just encourage you guys, we'll take it one block at a time.
Right.
Let's focus on the comprehensive plan first and focus on those goals and objectives, and see, for you guys to deliberate on which one of those plan designations is more appropriate and why. I know, Dan, you were getting into that.
Correct.
I just want to make sure we
Trying to
focus on
steal
the
my
first
thunder.
thing first. Yes.
okay. So getting to the comprehensive plan change. When you look at the comparison between ag forest designation in the comp plan and the rural residential in the comp plan, and staff has done a great job of going through and showing what meets and what doesn't meet. It's incredibly clear that this should have been zoned rural residential based on the attributes. The issue with slope, everything from the different type of small scale farming use, agricultural uses, so on and so forth. So, and I want to commend staff for doing such a great job. It clearly it would be a challenge to put it into ag forest. I'll stop there because I don't want to steal any of your guys' thunder.
Well, yeah, as usual, you pretty much covered everything, but I agree with the fact that the comp plan also talks about meeting these objectives right here, which is we're already close to major road systems. We're already close to the urban areas, cities. This is where these kind of developments actually should happen, rather than out in the middle of
Nowhere.
egg 20. That's why I think that, it was a well-prepared presentation. And I think that between staff and the applicant, they've more than shown why this shouldn't have been AF10, but that's just where I am.
Steve?
I'm good with it. It's a good spot for it.
Yeah, quite frankly, when you look at the attributes, it almost should be suburban. Okay, then I will go ahead and entertain a motion on the comp plan change. If you gentlemen have no other discussion. Are you satisfied with that?
I am.
Okay. We'll make it happen.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I move to approve project file AM 001 or 0001-22 requesting a comprehensive land use amendment from ag forest land to rural residential, finding that it is in accord with the general and specific objectives of the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan and the Bonner County Revised Code is enumerated in the following conclusions of law. And based upon the evidence submitted up to the time of the staff report was prepared, testimony received at this hearing. I further move to adopt the findings of facts and conclusions of law as set forth in the staff report and direct staff, planning staff to draft written findings and conclusions to reflect this motion, have the chairman sign and transmit to all interested parties. This action does not result in the taking of private property.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Connolly?
Aye.
Commissioner Bradshaw?
Aye, your amendment.
Okay, motion passes now. The comp plan map resolution adoption. We have a resolution number.
All right, I move to approve resolution 2022-31, amending Bonner County projected land use map.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner
Aye.
Connolly? Commissioner Bradshaw?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. Now let's deliberate on the zone change. I think a lot of the things that we said in the for the comp plan actually carry over to a large degree. Once again, we're looking at the comparisons between 10s and 5s. You already have the existing density that are actually below 5 in most cases. You know what? I'm going to stop there and let you guys talk.
Well, that's great. That's awesome. So I've got a few things to say. So one thing I want to say is that we have 3 different letters that are actually in support of this.
Mhm.
And they are actually bordering this property also, and one of them is a large parcel. And I think that the reason is because they realize the difficulty in finding property in Bonner County that you can afford and have your family live in. And I think the point has been made. I'm not sure that we have to go along with each and every one of those requests, but I think this one fits. I do believe it fits in the area. And I think the point has been made.
Steve?
No, I'm just mirror what Jeff said, and it's always great when a family can do that, especially in today's market.
I'll go ahead and add that our family has a substantial piece of property that my wife and I were gifted a section of land, a piece of land within that property. And we have neighboring on the west side, 1.2 acre parcels. We have a whole development. It's got all small parcels. To the north of us, we have 5s. And it has not impacted our property a single bit. It was a great opportunity for my wife and I, and I'm thankful for it. And I'm a big fan of trying to keep Bonner County families in Bonner County. We are gradually losing our culture and it's being replaced with cultures from outside of the county. And if we don't make room for our own kids who were born and raised here and know and love the culture, I'm concerned about what the county will become. So with that,
Can I ask you to elaborate on, or at least deliberate on one key point that
Sure.
I think you guys danced around it, but I want to see if we can hit it directly. So the difference really in this case, I think, between R10s and R5s is that criteria that they are near, at or near those adjacent properties that are at or near 5 acres or below. And so would you just please, reflect on that and like reference the map, see if that is playing into your decision. I think that really is the key that you guys have to that distinguishes between those 2 designations here. So I just want to make sure we hit
want us to
that.
reflect in silence or you want us to actually?
Well,
I know, I'm just kidding.
What he said, no.
No, I think we did hit it, but to satisfy our attorney, because we actually do like it. And he helps keep us out of trouble for the most part. We do have the ordinance does say at or near 5 acre density. And we clearly have, when you look at the adjacent map, we clearly have parcels that are not only at or near, but even below, well below. So the densities would actually be, in some cases, double that. So it constitutes another reason to change that zoning. And actually, in this case, what we're doing is we are correcting the zoning. And I'll also add that I thought it was a great thing to throw in there that one of the people in opposition to this that I think swayed the Planning and Zoning Commission had earlier made the opposite argument to get his property changed. So it was good for me, but not for thee. And I always have an issue with those kind of arguments as well. So does that satisfy your worldly desires? Okay, want to make sure. Okay, so with that, let's go back to the zone change. You have something to add?
I think I'll just add a little bit more, of course, it's more towards the comp plan, but it's clustering these, grouping these dwellings in a fashion that doesn't show sprawl. But, you know, I mean, I think that's a great idea. And as far as that goes, I mean, 5 acres with trees on it is rural. I mean, it truly is.
And it's the very definition. It's actually rural.
What it says, rural residential.
Okay, so now, can I get a zone change?
That one you,
Can we get back to you tomorrow on that?
yeah.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
All right, I move to approve this project file ZC 0002-22, requesting a zone change from Ag Force 10 to Rural 5, finding that it is in accord with the general and specific objectives of the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan and Bonner County Revised Code as enumerated in the following conclusions of law. Based upon the evidence submitted up to the time staff report was prepared and testimony received at this hearing, I further move to adopt the findings, fact, and conclusions of law as set forth in the staff report and direct planning staff to draft written findings and conclusions to reflect that motion. Have the chairman sign and transmit to all interested parties. This action does not result in the taking of private property.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Connolly?
Aye.
Commissioner Bradshaw?
Aye. Ma'am.
Okay, now the ordinance motion, excuse me,
Oops.
zone change ordinance. motion.
I already closed the book.
Literally this one.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I move to approve an ordinance of Bonner County, the number to be assigned citing its authority and providing for amendment of the official zoning map of Bonner County by the reclassifications of lands located in section 22, township 58 north.
32.
What?
Section 32,
Yeah,
township 50 north. I thought you said 22.
32,
Okay.
just for clarification, section 32, township 58 north, range 1 west, Boise Meridian, Bonner County, Idaho, from agricultural forest 10 to rural 5, and provide for an effective date. I further move to authorize the chair to sign the official supplementary zoning map upon publication of the ordinance.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Aye.
Commissioner Connolly?
Aye.
Commissioner Bradshaw?
And that
Aye,
motion
you're
passes.
welcome.
And it is